So the question becomes, is it relative or is it absolute? What is absolute is that you need to absolutely avoid the extremes. That's absolute. You see, you need to avoid the extremes. So that's absolutely true. What is desirable has to do with what your policy made of. What is your material? Who is it made of? Where are you situated? For example, let me give you practical. Are you close to water? Okay. Do you have proportion men to women in your community? What is the ratio of slaves to non-slaves in your community? Did you have a history of monarchy before I can prescribe what form of government is good for you? How have you, your virtues, your ethics, ethos? You see, somebody mentioned logos, ethos, and again, pathos. What is that unique qualities in your community? Based on that, I can tell you what type of government would be suitable for you. So there is no one absolute government, the best for everyone. See how practical he is. Okay. He's saying, I cannot write a prescription for you. I cannot say democracy is the best form of government for you. Because I don't know the particulars. See, I don't know this moderation. I don't know your community. So, for example, let me just practically. If you have a lot of religious people in your community, ethos or ethics of whatever. Now that's different than if you have a bunch of barbarians. So we need to assess that, and that becomes the art of it. Now, this is manifested in when he talks about the best forms of government. What is famous in history of political thought is what has come to be known as typology of government by Aristotle. It's even more famous than Plato's typology, the types of government. If you remember, I talked about 3 forms of government. Aristotle acknowledges that there are 3 forms of government. The government of one, the government of the few, and the government of the many. That he acknowledges. So we got 3 forms of government. Now he says, of these 3 forms of government, 6 types of government, 3 good ones and 3 bad ones or aberrations. Bad ones, right? Now, what are the 3 good ones? Monarchy. Remember we talked about this. Aristocracy and democracy. I'm going to leave democracy for a second here because I'm going to give you, this is Plato's. But Aristotle says polity. So this is Aristotle. The 3 bad ones. Tyranny, oligarchy, democracy. That becomes Aristotle's, Plato's becomes anarchy or democracy. Now, look at the difference. Now let me go through the top one. Of the best ones, which one is the best of the best?
Depends. You can't tell.
Well, you see, this is based on what I told you, it depends. So he's going to be conditional. He says, I told you how conservative he gets. Look what he said. He said, if there is a God amongst men.
Is this Plato or
This is Aristotle.
Okay.
If there is a God amongst men, you should let him rule.
So you are now legitimizing the Velayat Paris.
Wait. If there is a God amongst men, what does he say? King Solomon, right? You got King Solomon amongst you. Let me make it simpler. In this class, if someone, God forbid, had a heart attack, who should decide what to do with this guy? Why? Mercedes. No, Dr. Milani, right? If we had a mathematician in here and we had a mathematical problem, who would you go to? Mercedes. It's simple. Okay. Now, his point is, if you have a God amongst men, if someone who knows everything, or who knows the city, then you should go to him. But he said, it's so hard to find someone like that. It's so hard. And the difference, though, is this, that he does what's best for the people, not for himself. So not only you have to be good intellectually, but also good in terms of community. In other words, the best ruler is what the person who takes care of the people, not himself. The benefit the other, not the self. Now, but he says, well, if it's very hard to find one good man, see how hard it is to find few good men. So that's impossible. So the most practical of them all is really the best of the best, maybe this, but what is practical of the best ones is the polity. What is polity? Small community, city-state, of equals, of middle class, meaning that not too rich, not too poor. In other words, you have property qualification. So you may say, well, only people who have a car vote and participate. Everyone has a car, or telephone. Everyone has a car, therefore most people qualify. He says, when you have property, you have a stake in the system, you want to maintain it. You don't want to destroy it. Therefore, it's just like when you buy a house. See, if you're renting, you don't give a hoot about what happens to the wall. But if you own the house, right, then it's, oh my God, make sure I don't put too much, don't put the nail too deep, don't scratch the wall, make sure, or you pay the taxes in time. If you're renting, you don't care whether they pay the taxes or not. So you take care of it. He says, again, conservatism, he says, look at the value of property. He doesn't think like Plato, property doesn't belong. He says property, there's a value in this because it has survived the test of time. Therefore, property ownership is good. Now, look what he says on the bad one. On the bad ones, which one is the best? He says on the bad one, the worst is simple. The worst one is this one because it's tyrannical one. But the best of the worst is this one, the government of the poor, democracy. And he defines democracy as the government of the poor. Because at least the majority enjoy, even if it's tyrannical or it's bad, it's the majority enjoys. So, now you want to decide what type of government you have, tell me what you have. Who do you have amongst you? Who can rule? Let me see. But certainly in all cases, you avoid the extremes. Don't forget that the entire purpose, now this is why it's different than the Latifari and other stuff, that the entire purpose of the city-state, the final cause is what? Of the city. Or, right? Is in essence to make individuals reach their potentials as a virtuous, contemplative human beings. And he says, you know how we have this expression, one flower doesn't make a spring? Aristotle. It means one good deed doesn't make you a good human being. You live in a community and you practice and you practice. You cannot be a good person when everyone is a thief around you. So a community is what makes you. A community is what breaks you. A community is what make your talent flourish and reach your potentials. I'm going to stop here, but you see how the logic goes, how ethics and politics hand in hand create a community. And to him, community is organic and it's well worth preserving because it's, after all, it is much more than the sum of individuals. It's a community that is has an organic entity and can function to fulfill all the potential. Yes?
Can you compare the middle class of Aristotle with the auxiliaries of Plato?
The middle class? Yeah, well, you can see that how, for example, Aristotle also looks at the Persian constitution, looks at all these, looks at Sparta, and how disciplined they are. So does Plato. Plato's, that discipline that you see with the property and non-property owning. Aristotle is very pragmatic. The middle class, the reason he says middle class, because he knows that instability, and he writes on all of these. He says the main characteristic of democracy is freedom and equality. And he goes on to see how you can achieve this. He writes pages